All right. So here we are. It's Monday morning again.
Stormy Monday morning.
That's right. For you, for here. Although remember, what was it what's everybody said last night? The storm thing. I love that.
That was
It's kind of real magic. I know. I wrote that down. I'm like,
I wrote that down too. I was like, think about Stormtrooper.
I know, right?
I was just like, oh yeah, I really like that storm thing.
So we're referring to a call that we did with a handful of people last night that not quite sure to even explain what that was about because we're even not sure. I don't think it was just sort of kicking some stuff around. Anyway, interestingly, so I had a call this morning with a coach that I'm working with or whatever, as Sarah and I are both working with. Coincidentally. And what was interesting in the conversation is, I was talking about like everything I've done. And of course, it's just sort of everything pops. I always set the intention in any conversation that what's important pops up to the surface, pretty easily. And so I wasn't even sure what I was going to be talking about there. And I was talking about so I was looking at, we went back to my childhood. Of course, I know there's the mother thing. The mother, it was never good enough. Like 98, why didn't you get 100?
Right.
It's never good enough, right? And then I said, the thing is, it's really interesting is I went through 17 years in corporate, extremely successful. And yes, I worked hard. I put my what is it, the nose to the grindstone, whatever that saying is, and I was, but I was actually rewarded for it handsomely. I was promoted continuously throughout, and I was a really young manager because I got stuff done. I had my employees get stuff done, and I was a really young director. And so when I left corporate, and this is what caught me. So I was saying, when I left corporate, I was done with the politics of big corporate because it was tiring. It took all my energy from actually doing the stuff I like to do. Right. So that is one point right there. The other thing is and what came out of my mouth that I said, I was like, because at that point I was like, I'm done with this. I can do this on my own. Right. I can do this on my own. And I have been doing it on my own and the thing is, and then I left and I'm doing the same kind of effort and the same kind of stuff, but I'm not getting the same level of return, right? That I'm totally dedicating myself, which that's just in my nature, right? And if I like what I do, if I'm I delve myself into it, I do commit myself to it 100%. But, and what I said was this. So, I was talking about, in the context of this, I entered corporate in the late 80s when the biggest thing for women to do in entering corporate was to break the glass ceiling, right? And there was so much in terms of male dominance and all that kind of stuff. And I said, and I could do that. I could run circles around them because I didn't do the boys club. I didn't do, I basically went and got the job done. And then they're like, oh, well, look, she gets the job done. We're going to promote her. So, and I'm like, so what's interesting is I continuously was promoted and recognized and everything else by men. Right. And my last, and
who was in that position to acknowledge you.
Yeah. And then, the last position I had where I was director of global marketing, I reported into a woman, but she was very masculine. She had very
right.
So I would still consider her masculine
energy.
Yeah. Energy. But then, but what came up and I said, oh, there must be something about this. Number one, doing this on my own, right? I can do this on my own.
Right.
Without, yeah. But there's also what she said to me was, she suggested a thing about doing a resolution about women and trusting women to support you. Because it's funny, my mother never supported me. It was, you're not good enough. But men did.
And the belief that women weren't in a position to support you enough to make a difference.
Yes.
I mean, boy, that just shot through me.
Yep.
Wow.
Powerful, right? And I was like, oh, thank you. That gave me my marching orders for this week on what I'm working on in meditation.
Which is another way we've held the roles in place.
Yep.
Totally unconsciously.
Yep. Yep. And I said, and the thing is, I had an admin for a couple of years and whatever. And then I asked for another one. And I just never felt like it got to what I wanted it to be.
Right.
And it's like, but all of the people I've asked to support me in this business have all been female. But if I don't trust that women can support me adequately or whatever,
right,
the way that I support them or whatever, then it's just not going to happen, right? Energetically. Wow.
Right.
That's so powerful.
Wow.
And I'm like, and that's funny because I'm pretty much surrounded by women now. Right?
Right, right.
So that's something to look at. I'm not even sure where to go with that here today. But, being that we're talking about looking at our darkness.
Yeah, which leads me to the meditation I did this morning, which I had run into that sense of loneliness that we talked about over the weekend, and how with physically being alone and the that it struck, even though technically you aren't, you still have that sense of loneliness, and that it struck a deeper chord that we talked about in the original separation, and that sense of being separate from the wholeness.
Right.
I'm losing my thoughts. So anyway, I went into meditation to look at that part of me that I had separated from. And in doing that, remember we talked about when I was young and felt responsible for the dog dying and not being there to take care of the dog, and
right. Mm-hmm.
needing to forgive that 6-year-old for being powerless, even though at that age probably still knowing that I was powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole conflict and the need to forgive that. And so I went in looking at that childhood, because that's where we began the forgetting. And I saw this door that I'd created and the intricacies. I mean, and it was like hand carved. It was the most beautiful, heart-wrenching thing I'd ever seen. And I saw my entire family there helping me create it.
Mm-hmm.
Through all the circumstances of being the youngest of 4, with an overwhelmed mother and a father who had to work, the whole bit, I saw it all. And I had such a different feeling towards my family and working through that. But anyway, so, I kept saying, oh, well, this door hadn't been opened in so long, it's going to be hard to open. It's going to be, and it was like, no, not really. You're just delaying. So finally, as I touched the door with both hands, it didn't open. It just went away. And there was Callie.
Cool.
And I was just like, I totally get it. I totally get it now. And I just stepped into her, and I'm telling you what.
The power is incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
And the tears and the coming home and the, oh my God, I could have used this so long ago.
Yeah.
But it was, and then the storm started. Which, when I looked at the weather yesterday, there was no chance of rain today. None.
That's interesting. Well, Callie, you just
I know. And I was just like, it's like, I totally get it. And so, of course, immediately I start Googling pictures of Callie. And it's like, I need all those hands.
Yeah.
I need all those faces. I need to pull together whatever this is.
Yeah.
So,
And it's what's interesting is when you're saying that, and I was thinking about my mother thing and the not trusting women and blah blah blah.
oh, perfect. Yeah.
The other side to that, because we don't want to forget any side to anything, right, is my father.
Right.
Who he was an inconsistent supporter as well. Right. So he would get me, and I think of him as, because my parents were divorced when I was young, and that was a very unusual situation back in the 70s and 80s, right? So he lived like a half hour away from us, and I saw him every weekend and whatever. And he was the one that I went to if I needed money for something, right?
Right.
Because I would go ask your father, and there was a reason for that I figured out later, that I found out later on as an adult, but it was an agreement that they'd had when they divorced. But when, when I did have to go to him, it was always, I always had to work hard to get it.
Oh, well, and be cross-examined and justify this, and yeah, absolutely.
Which is what what trained me to become very masterful at that kind of a conversation, right? Which, so I'm thankful for that. Right. But I always felt like I had to work for it. Again, it goes back to that having to work for it, right? But also, he did pull the rug out from under me when I was a teenager, and that was another thing where I didn't trust men, right? So there's like, okay, I can trust. So like, if I look at that, when you're saying that, I'm like, okay, then who do I trust?
Right.
But it's interesting because though I've held some very, we all have the masculine and feminine within us. So when I was in corporate, I held a very masculine demeanor because that was what was expected of me, right?
Right.
Except I had the feminine demeanor of that unity and bringing everything together, which I think added the extra something, je ne sais quoi, that allowed me to continue to get promoted and stuff. But underlying, because we're looking at the whole picture and we're not ignoring the darkness anymore, right? And not to say that the masculine side is the darkness, but it is that separation-based creation as we understand it, right? So,
right.
So it was like, yeah, I'm trying to find where this, like, I'm watching the rabbit go down the rabbit hole, and I'm just like, okay, this is really deep.
Yeah, really deep is a good word for it.
And yeah, it's something around that, or it's like, I want to even go beyond not trusting men and not trusting women. I want to go into
humanity.
Not even humanity. Separation.
Why should we trust it?
And distrust is separation. So therefore it's created in separation anyway.
Right. Well, it's like, why should you trust the perceived need for any of this?
Because it's only an illusion anyway, right? Except if we want to embrace it to allow us to support our means, which is what you saw with Callie, right?
Right.
And that's really what we talked about last week too, in that allowing that darkness and separation, the power of that creation to support us in that wholeness, right? As part of the wholeness, because support is really wholeness, right? Because support is allowing it to be a part of you, right? Instead of outside of you, right? So it allows me to say it's all within me, so therefore I have access to all of it, right? Where when you're in the feeling of lack of support, you're still feeling like it has to come from outside.
Right.
Now, there's something in there that I can't quite get yet when I think I can do this on my own, right? And that whole attitude.
Yeah, there's some, the first word that came to me was balancing in there, and then I'm like, well, maybe alignment, but there's some integration or some understanding or something that's missing. He's a mess. And the other one's at my feet. And the cat pissed because she can't get in my lap. It's over, buddy. It's almost over. We're almost done. He is so hot.
Buster. Buster. Hey, buddy. Thanks for joining our call today.
Yeah.
Um,
Now Charlie has to get closer.
Somebody's talking to Buster, not me. What?
I know.
Hi, Charlie, even though I don't see you. Hey, Charlie. So where were we?
The alignment, the integration, what does all this mean? What do we do with all these understandings?
Oh, there's a yawn. Oh, there's so when we go back to our conversation, our interchange, Saturday, whatever. So many things coming up about.
I know, it's like I can't even focus on one of them anymore, and which means that they all fall into the same thread. We just haven't found what that thread is.
Right. We haven't yet remembered. Yes, that's right. It feels so close though, right? It feels so close. So
yeah.
There was something about the pulling away, but I don't know what I'm pulling away from. That cord thing. There's
being held back.
Yeah. And that I can't quite see it yet. It's there. Like, because there's a part of me that a little part of me will still allow it to some degree, and there's the other part of me that it's like trying to grab a ghost, where it's like, no, it's nothing, right? Which is truly what it is.
So is it, if you feel unsupported, maybe these aren't the right words, but the general idea, by women,
mm-hmm.
Does that mean that there's a sense of being female, that there's a sense that you're unsupporting of yourself?
Probably. To some degree. I mean, I would say I've changed that a little.
Oh, and that women in all of this separation-based existence that's been the role, to be unsupportive. Outwardly. That feels
of each other, and only to be supportive of men, right? Because that's the whole patriarchy.
Right, and that's by design.
Oh yeah, that feels crappy. Thank you for bringing that up.
That feels so nasty. I mean, because literally,
I know, and you know what? Women can say that and they can get outraged about it, but it's true. I mean, and I joke about it all the time. It's like, it's like like the joke we have about, that we joke about in spirituality, right? When it comes to men versus women, and it's like a woman has to sit, like, be there 40 times as much, or she has to be perceived as an elder, like, because older women have a different ranking than, you know what I'm saying, than younger women.
Absolutely.
And
if you haven't done this for 50 years, who are you to be an expert on anything?
Right. And yet you can have, like, all this going on. You have like 50 women in the room, and you could have one man show up with his head shaved in robes and start talking in obtusities, as I call them. Right.
Right.
And they all look to him for the answer. And I've seen that even happen in meetups that I like will, like, put together. And And it's like, well, they have no idea who this person is or whatever, but they're assuming because he's the man in the room that
Right.
he's going to have the answers.
Right.
That is an underlying thing, and we created that. So there's no like, and
Right. Absolutely.
and yes, do we have still matriarchal societies? Absolutely. Have we gone through matriarchal periods? But that was more in I feel like it was more in the beginning as we were shifting.
Right.
Part of this existence has been to really do the separation-based creation, which is the masculine energy as it's been like, developed. So the way for us to all, hit the equality is to allow all of that balance within ourselves and
to forgive that feminine energy.
Yep. And so, in the process of
agree to be that subordinate or passive or whatever word you want to put on it, whatever you feel it's been.
Yep. Because you know what? That's the one thing that is, that goes back to the trigger I had like a week and a half ago. Interesting. That is one thing that occasionally, now I am so accepting in general, right? But every once in a while, this is perfect because this is what we're going through right now, is picking up these things that we're so blind to within ourselves, right?
Right.
Was that person I think I mentioned last week who, was like totally triggering me over something and it had to do with a man.
Yeah.
And I can't help myself. And yet she knows it's destructive.
Right.
She knows she sees him as he is. I mean, she understands he's a narcissist. She knows it's destructive for her. She knows it's because of her own self-loathing. And yet she still goes back and still goes. Right. And I can say this safely because I know a number of people doing the same thing over and over again. So it's not like somebody could be watching this and be like, oh, it's me she's talking about. It's like, nope, it's like probably somebody else because there's a lot of people I talked about. And it typically doesn't trigger me, but that one particular night it did. And it was like, oh, well, there's something for me to look at because it has nothing to do with the person. It's not them, it's me, right? It's just our process.
Right.
It's the same thing. That's the thing is I'm weak to men, right? I need a man, or that belief that you need a man, that belief that you can't do without a man, that a man has to be the provider and support and, and blah, blah, blah.
Or if he's not, he has to approve of how you've chosen
to
be the provider.
Right. So, and it's interesting because my marriage is like the most equal marriage I think ever, which is perfect. And yet if I still harbor this stuff, then there's still something I'm holding in different ways, which is the way it's probably played out then.
Right.
In my feeling like it's all this work with very little support. Right.
Right.
Oh, God, we really hit the muck today, didn't we?
We really did. This is, got to put on the hip waders.
And what better way to resolve this than to go into a field that is dominated in femininity right now, right?
Right.
So, hey, let's just throw yourself into the fire, and till you figure it out. I got it. Ugh, that feels so big. That forgiveness.
It really does, but I mean, we've, it's like when you're trying to dig up a big plant or whatever, and it's like you dig around it and dig around it and dig around it, but until you get that taproot, it's not going to let go. And I feel like we've been digging around it, so maybe it's just the taproot that's left.
Well, and I mean, once we forgive and accept the roles that we've chosen, that we have played out, that we have, God, there's so many words that come to mind, that we've pitied, that we've, felt bad for, that we have victimized or felt victimized by.
Right.
So many piles of poo.
Right.
What do you have to say, Bossy?
This thunder needs to quit.
I don't hear it at all. Interesting.
It's been like a low rumble. There was only one really loud bang crash, but that's all it takes.
Yeah.
I think it's through now. It still takes him a while to settle down, reground, so to speak.
So then where do we focus? We focus on that acceptance of all the roles that we created, of the feminine, the masculine, the societal, the subservience, what's the opposite of subservience? The
Dominance.
dominance. There's something else. There's a taproot that's still there.
Powerlessness.
Well, it goes back to that power versus powerlessness, right? Which we talked about last week.
Right.
Maybe it's that there's an important part of us focusing on that acceptance, forgiveness and acceptance and resolution and completion of all those roles that we have put into feminine and masculine categories.
Well, and it's almost like the need to forgive ourselves for believing that our role is that of powerlessness, which couldn't be more opposite than the truth. And that we've integrated it into everything, our ability to create new life, but we made it painful. It's like everywhere.
Right.
Whether it's the need to forgive that we did that, or I hate to use the word need, or releasing that role. And I don't believe that we can, integrate our shadow side, dark side, whatever you want to call it, until that forgiveness is there.
Oh, maybe that's the important part of it coming up. Yeah.
Because it reintegrates the power.
Yeah. Yep, something shifted there. Just saying that.
Yeah. And what occurs to me is I've always thought, and, last Friday when I went to the bull meditation, we talked about the shadow side, and I said, that I think of so many, I think of like nature. It's the ultimate in how something is so powerful, like water. It can give life at the same time take life.
Just as easily. Yep.
Right. And it's, if you look at the bigger picture, like everything in nature just is. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. Whether it serves a purpose like a tornado in releasing a certain energy within the atmosphere. Same for a hurricane, same for a flood. I mean, it just is. And where was I going with that? It's been thought that the earth's been asleep and that she's waking up. Gaia's waking up, and it's like she's waking up to saying, I'm no longer going to be the subservient to the parasites living on me.
That I've allowed. Yeah.
I'm about to give him the whole chair. There we go. Better? Better? Yeah, I know it's thundering again. I know. It's okay. It's okay.
So yeah, he's got a message in there, obviously.
Yeah. Just sit down, buddy. Just sit down. You'll feel better. Here. See? Better? No, I don't need legs.
No more fear. Set resolution. Yeah, it's bringing it all together. It goes back to Callie, and I keep on saying Callie has been a really prominent energy lately anyway.
Yeah.
Representation of the energy of.
Well, and the richness, that's what I kept, that's when I saw her, it was like, that's what I've been missing is the depth of the, even if it's just the colors, it's like everything is richer and more vibrant with that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt the restriction of the flatness that I've been living in by choice.
Right. Well, and it's funny because I'm looking at Buster, and like I said, he's got something.
Now, this is big for him.
Well, and you just think, well, what's the power of the storm? The power of the storm is the Kali power, right? Of that. We call it destruction, but it's really just a new creation, right?
Right.
And it's that old energy that's still afraid. I mean, and maybe that's what's within us is like, it's like we're stuck in the cycle of, I don't know, there's something about like being afraid of, well, first of all, letting go of these roles, letting go of or shifting or changing the way we've done things, right? The way we've created. It's not quite right. I can't get the words around it. Yet. Or maybe it's that resolution, because as this all comes together, what we call the masculine energy just goes away because it was created in separation.
Right.
And maybe that's the fear.
I feel that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, think about that. We believed we lived an existence of totally dependent on the masculine energy. And here we are saying it needs to go away. That's pretty fearful.
Well, and I wouldn't even say like, because when we say it needs to go away, it sounds like it imparts.
Well,
right?
it needs to resolve.
Right. It's time to resolve. It's time for it to resolve so that we move into a completely different creation.
Right.
And for us to move into entirely, so, okay, this is sort of like what I was talking about this morning on my call before we got on was, so at some point, you've just got to, at some point, you just have to raise the house. At some point, you have to clear it all out and start into something fresh, right?
Right.
And that's the message that I got for years about us. It's time to just pull the damn Band-Aid off and stop putting Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid, right? So we've done all forms of these particular roles and experiences. I just need to turn off my noise here. Come on. My thing keeps on beeping at me. So it's like what I was talking about this morning, which is I have all these hundreds of hours of video and all of this written stuff.
Right.
And I'm ready to toss it all and just start fresh because
I know.
It's different now. Everything's different now. Like what we're doing with the Trinity website, and rewriting the whole thing, which is why it's taken so long, because it's like, no, I'm not just repurposing the old stuff.
Right.
I'm looking at it fresh to say, what do we put now? What do we say now? What is really truth now, not 5 minutes ago or 5 hours ago. But when we do that, it's important to, I'm getting, it's that resolution of all of these. It's acceptance, it's forgiveness, like, because we can't accept if we don't forgive, right?
Absolutely.
That's all part of it. So forgiveness, acceptance, and resolution, completion of all the roles, whether it's feminine, masculine, subservient, dominant, powerful, powerless, all of those, that was all wrapped up in how we created this reality as we know it, right? And we keep on trying to change it, but we keep on doing it with band-aids, and we
keep trying to change it within the same rules.
And now, but to really change it is to change the rules,
or have no rules,
right? Or create something else, so that's the fear. And it's almost like that's what this seems like Buster is like representing, is like that extreme fear that's coming up in the collective of, well, what does that look like as the tower falls, right?
Right.
The tower card and the tarot deck. What does it look like when the tower falls? It's, to many people, it's scary.
Right.
Because we're just annihilating everything. There's the Kali energy. Time to annihilate this so that we can start fresh.
Right. Clean slate.
And I don't like to use the word annihilate because it implies a bad judgment.
Right.
A painful, fearful thing. But it's like time to, like, we have the power of creation at such an infinite amount. We can create like this and just be in a different universe. It doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be drawn out. It doesn't have to be whatever. Right?
Suffering.
And in an outside of space and time, it only happens in one moment, when it happens all simultaneously anyway, right?
Right.
Yeah, let's get into that philosophical discussion.
Right.
So it's, oh my goodness. It's almost like the chicken and the egg question, but it's like, it's a joke. There's a joke that's on a TV show that's really a pretty awful TV show that I just have been picking up because there's nothing to watch right now. It's really sort of lame. But it's a comedy, and for whatever reason, it's sort of dark, which, anything dark right now is like, okay, so what's this in front of me, but there's this one guy who is so angry at this peer of his for, like, he believes he sold out and and all this kind of stuff, right? But the other guy got famous on, like, putting out this book on philosophy, and it was like, I think the title was "The Question is the Answer," and that just rings in my head, is like, the question is the answer, right?
Right.
Because the mind can't wrap itself around that. The question is the answer.
Right.
Anybody who's watching this could go, what do you mean? Right?
Well, I mean, turn it around. The answer is the question.
That's right. So it's that everything simultaneously and not simultaneously happens, right? So it's all simultaneously done, completed, resolved, and packaged up into a tight little bow, as we even feel like we are traveling through it. I think Doug Adams had it right in his books about, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and all the other ones that went along with it. So, and then when the mind hears that and starts to consider it, it wants to just go and curl up into the fetal position and hide in the corner somewhere.
Right.
So that's getting to a bigger picture. But I feel like the first step for us today in this is that whole forgiveness and that acceptance and resolution, embracing that it's all powerful and all perfect. You didn't say anything about a card this morning.
What I drew was Key of Life, spinning the Ankh, the Key of Life, which is talks about Key of Life is the mysterious Ankh, the looped cross held in the hand of Isis. This mystery is opening to you now. New life being born through you now. It could be a creation sense or in the physical sense, in terms of health, or even a child that wishes to be born. A new project, whatever the form, it will enrich your life, bringing you into wholeness and fulfillment.
Baby in the knees.
Right, that.
Why I would hold them there, it's all part of this, the birthing. Well, and birthing is an implication of, I want to say an implication of dying, of something else dying.
Right.
And you were talking about, on the call we did last night,
power of death.
The power of death. Yep.
Which, it's death here is birth somewhere else.
Right. And that's how I see it.
Right. For some reason, this thought came to me. It was just this morning, and I wondered why it was coming up. As at one time I had posted a picture of sunrise, and I said, which is your favorite, sunrise or sunset? And somebody said both. And I don't know if that was you, but somebody said both. And I said, well, someone's sunset is someone else's sunrise.
That's right.
So it's just relative.
Yes, it is.
So that's very, very much just like birth and death.
That's right. It's just transitions, which is why I usually call somebody dying transition. Truly, that's all it is. From the physical to the non-physical. You're done in this pair of jeans. It's time to move on to whatever else is on your docket.
Right. Well, and I felt as I watched both my parents struggle to let go enough of the physical to die.
Right.
And that's the part that always confounded me. And I think that is because their belief that and maybe I'm just projecting this, but their belief that it has to be hard, that it has to be a struggle, and that this is too important to let go of.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember once, 15 years ago, my mother talking about a friend and I think she's going to make it and all this kind of stuff. And I said, she's still going to die one day. And boy, my mother was sour at me for saying that, but it's like, we all are. I'm not singling out your friend.
I know. It's really funny because I've stopped. It's been funny because when I ask questions like, is this individual dying? I stopped asking that because we're all dying. Because we're one day closer to when we get done with this and we transition out. So it's like, okay, that's a relative question too.
Yeah, it's like my daughter last night was talking about the fish and she goes, Mom, is she going to die? And I was like, yeah, and so are you. And so am I. We all are. And she just was like, she was horrified. She was like, well, I just don't want to talk about that. Like, you brought it up.
I know.
But it's that letting go enough to be able to allow the physical to not define you anymore.
Well, and also,
And think of the power in that.
all right, so think about that though. When we die, we are so why do we fight it? We put so much energy into staying in the physical, like we don't even realize it, right? There's our gravity, right? We put so much energy into staying physical in this dimension when we're in a body. It becomes an anchor for us, and we don't even realize that, the kind of anchor it is.
Right.
So when it's time to let go, it's letting go of the identity that went along with that anchor, right?
Right. Letting go of what you see in the mirror. Because that's the only thing that changes.
Right. That's the only thing. So there's something about that and about what you're calling the power of death. Because we do die every day,
Right. Well, and if
every moment.
Well, and if you believe, you die every night when you go to sleep. You leave your body.
Yeah. So
some people do have a hard time with that.
Well, every moment really dies an old one and births a new one, right? So
Right.
but we don't think about that in that way. Like, and we congregate a whole bunch of things that bring in this power of anchoredness, right? That can represent that transition, right? Well, then it sort of makes it harder for us, doesn't it? Because then we build a wall to then break through it.
Right.
Like, why do we do that?
Right.
Because I totally believe that when the time comes for me to go in this life, I'm just going to go. There's going to be no sickness, no like need for some big catastrophe or whatever.
Right.
I'm going to say, okay, done. Time to go. Pop. And so think about the collective amount of energy that we use in every moment in creating this reality. It's tremendous.
It's, I would say, pretty all-consuming.
Yeah. And so, although it's like, of course, we have far more, power than that, but it's so much energy and power that we have created in its creation and in its reality that we have forgotten in it, in our focus in it, right? Of this multiverse, not just Earth, but I think across the multiverse, we are so focused in holding it together, we've forgotten how to let it go.
Right. Which, okay, if you look at it from that perspective, the exertion what's the word? The intention we place on staying in this physical body is the individual version of what we're talking about, the collective version of letting go.
Right, totally. Except trumped up by 5 bajillion, exponentially.
Now the dog comes, so the cat comes back.
Where's the kitty now?
Hey, I've got the dogs. I got my salt and pepper right here on the floor. But something shifted enough for him to be able to get out of the chair.
Yeah, I noticed. Now the cat's coming in like, I already knew all this.
Now it's time to get to the real work, so let's just get on with this.
Let's get on with it. I'm going to pause this, though, to take a bio break. All right. Okay. So, all right. I guess we just go back to that forgiveness, acceptance, resolution, whatever it takes, so that we can allow the resolution of that whole, what was it that you said before? From last week, the power versus the powerlessness, but to go
Right.
beyond that. There was something beyond that to do that. Oh, the darkness thing. For us to fully allow ourselves to accept the darkness is to fully forgive and accept all those roles and separations that we've created, right? Including the power and the powerlessness and the victim and the dominant and the male and the female and however we want to look at it.
Yeah. I mean, it literally encompasses everything that we deem needs forgiving
Yeah. So
in existence.
all of that, let's do it. Tied up in a neat little bow. All right, you ready?
Yep.
It started out as a real jumbled mess in the beginning.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this one's a to be continued all week too.
Yeah, because I kept hearing, you don't get to decide that for me.
Mm,
And then the brain kicks in and says, okay, who's saying that? The old or the new?
right.
By the end, it was like, okay, but we still need to work on that forgiveness thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw a bunch of things. It was like almost watching like puzzle pieces coming together, but it was like they're all moving like slowly. And yeah, I was shown a whole bunch of different things that I can't even remember, but it was like click, click. And I was just letting it go. And I was like, wow. and I could feel the enormity of it, which is why it felt slower, because
Right.
every click was a really enormous kind of shift of forgiveness. And so I was like, okay, yep, I'm feeling a lot better here, and I can tell this is going to be a continuation all week. So
Yeah, definitely.
it does feel like something shifted in a positive way. That feels good.
Right. I kept seeing energy levels, for lack of a better word, that like the physical. It's like it's. I see that energy level as like a blue grid, very structured, and I felt that there was uh, another element to that grid, but yet when I would look at it like from the outside looking in towards it, I would see that it was like, and the only thing I could come up with is like, on castles, how they had the gate that came down with the spikes at the end.
Uh-huh.
And I kept seeing that, and I kept seeing that it was like bleeding, where the grid, and I was like, no, that's not the intent here.
Right.
And I don't know whether that was the old and that the new was without that, or if it was just the perception of the new being. But it was like, no, that's not the intent here. So that seemed to resolve and feel so much better. And as I would do that, I could see that Buster at my feet would get more and more relaxed and laid back.
Good.
Yeah, so
Good. Yeah, it feels good in a very different way though. It's very,
very different.
yeah. As we say every week.
Yeah, but this week was really different.
Yeah, but like for reals.
Yeah.
All right. Well, much more to shift in this week. So thank you, anybody who's joined us, and we will see you next time.
Yes.